You are watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Rohingya rallies on the weekend demand return to Myanmar. We'll find out all about that with Adem, Carroll from Burma Task Force. But first, some news headlines. Government funds Helpline to support Afghan and Ukrainian youth. MP calls on government to bring in 10,000 Uyghurs as refugees. Traditional healing garden unveiled for National Indigenous Peoples Day. Nigerian Muslim group hails Supreme Court judgment on hijab. The Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Sean Fraser, has announced a partnership with Kids Help Phone to provide counselling services to Afghan and Ukrainian youth. Callers will be able to have a discussion with counsellors in Dari, Pashto, Ukrainian and Russian. The funding comes from a larger $2 million investment, which allows Kids Help Phone to expand their services to 100 languages by 2025. Kids Help Phone was established in 1989 to provide free and confidential support around the clock to youth across Canada. Liberal MP Samir Zuberi has tabled a motion in the House of Commons yesterday, calling on the government to take in 10,000 Uyghurs and other Turkic groups that have fled China. The refugee stream would start in 2024 and span over 2 years. The motion is non-binding and will be debated and voted on this fall. Zuberi says he is confident he can use the next few months to gather support for the motion. The effort comes after the House declared last year that China was committing genocide against Uyghurs and Turkic minorities. For National Indigenous Peoples Day, the Grand Prairie Friendship Centre in Alberta unveiled their traditional healing garden. The garden is meant to be a space for healing and learning. It will also be used to start a sustainable food program. Established in 1965, the centre implements programs to meet the needs of Indigenous people. Their aim is to bridge the cultural gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. The unveiling comes on National Indigenous Peoples Day, which Ottawa considers an opportunity, quote, for all Canadians to recognise and celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures and outstanding contributions of First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. The Muslim Media Watch Group of Nigeria applauded the Supreme Court judgment on female Muslim students wearing hijab in public schools in the country's largest city, Lagos. Group National Coordinator Alhaji Ibrahim Abdullahi called the court's ruling a landmark judgment that would restore sanity, peace and progress in the education system. Ibrahim said some opponents of hijab in public schools based their argument on the tradition and culture of their faith or that of the founders of their schools. He likened the hijab to the uniform put on by Catholic nuns. Ibrahim added the ban on hijab was highly discriminatory to Muslims and a violation of their fundamental human rights. That's it for the news. Yesterday was World Refugee Day, and thousands of Rohingya in the refugee camps in Bangladesh rallied, trying to draw attention to their cause. We have with us today Adem, Carroll, team lead of Justice for All Burma Task Force, to talk to us about the rallies, their demands, and the situation. Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're a regular guest on our show, and we always check in with you because of your team lead on the Burma Task Force. There are images of thousands of refugees in the camps in Bangladesh rallying with certain demands. Can you share with us what the demands were and why they wanted to have these rallies?
Yes. In a moment, we'll show a few images, but the young people especially have been asking for repatriation back to Rakhine State, Myanmar. We were a little concerned ahead of time that this might play into the hands of the Bangladesh authorities, who just want to get rid of this million population. But in fact, they are asking for repatriation with their rights restored and their homes restored. This is not very likely to happen, unfortunately and tragically, because, for example, the Burmese military has already constructed new homes on top of their old villages. I think the Burmese military is not going to be a very reliable negotiating partner. But it is good to hear from the Rohingya youth. They need to speak up, and this is the first time they've spoken up in public rallies, quite large rallies, since rallies were banned under Bangladesh authorities.
So this is what I was wondering about. They're sort of asking for the things that caused them to leave: citizenship, not to be called illegal immigrants, a safe living, not to be put in internment camps. So I was kind of struck, like, is this like a pie in the sky rally? Like, what can they really be hoping to get out of it?
I think the value is that their voice is heard. Rohingya have actually been excluded from meetings meetings between Bangladesh and Burma. China's involved, but the Rohingya themselves are not involved. So it's very important for credible voices, unified voices of the Rohingya themselves to be heard from. And I hope that Bangladesh will see them as an asset. And this is about their future. And it's been 5 years, 5 long years in the refugee camps, and still others were expelled from Burma decades ago. No one has solved this, and no wonder they're frustrated.
It seems like they don't have a proper advocate. I mean, Bangladesh wants them to leave. Myanmar doesn't want to accept them. I'm not exactly sure what role China's playing. Who can really speak for them, for their rights, for their safety, for their well-being?
Yeah, and there are plenty of very smart young Rohingya, and unfortunately, they have many challenges. Perhaps we can show some images from the camps now. It would be useful to give you a sense of this situation overall.
So let's talk about the camps. They have been billed as the world's largest refugee camps. Is that still true after the Ukraine crisis?
No. The Ukraine crisis, the invasion of Ukraine has resulted in the mass displacement of 14 million. That's much larger. Of that 14 million, approximately half have left. Those are the women and children mainly. They've left for Europe and have been admitted. As you can see, they had an easier time to be admitted, generally speaking, than the Rohingya have had. There's 100 million displaced.
Right. In terms of displacement numbers, that obviously there's no comparison, but the Ukrainians are being sort of accepted and integrated into society. I don't think they're clustered in camps like that, and nobody seems want to welcome them and give them a safe place to live. What's the US doing
in terms of Rohingya? US, of course, did recognize the Rohingya genocide in March of this year, finally, but they have not increased their refugee numbers. And I would say that as far as refugee policy goes, that Biden administration has to build on the ruins of refugee resettlement policy, ruins created by the Trump administration, which moved staff, shut down offices, defunded refugee resettlement organizations, and made a mess. And so this is giving some excuse to the Biden administration, but not total support, because they've been slow to pick up the pieces. And they have said that they would increase the cap of refugees to 125,000 a year, plus the 70,000 Afghans, interpreters and so forth, who fled last year. That's a good number compared to the 11,000 that was admitted a year during Trump administration, even less, in fact. But unfortunately, in 2021, we only admitted less than 15,000 because of this destruction of infrastructure, of not enough staff, and because of COVID-19. So there's many reasons, but in fact, it's not acceptable, and we are calling on the Biden administration to do better. In Canada, you have much more open policies, and you have a much more pro-immigrant point of view in the public. For example, 30%, only 30% would like less immigrants in Canada, according to recent polls. And the numbers are much higher in the US. And the Gallup poll from February of this year showed that 87% of Republicans would like there to be, are not happy with the immigration numbers, and about 70% are very clear they want less immigrants. So we're dealing with a lot more backlash, partly because of the southern border.
One of the refugees has described life in the Rohingya camp as a living hell. We've heard about human trafficking, education has been shut down. I don't know what they do all day. Tell us what it's like to be a Rohingya in the camp.
Yeah, we have a Rohingya staffer who's in touch with us every day, and life is difficult. There are floods, there are fires, there's a lot of despair ever since the barbed wire went up. There are more checkpoints. There have been arrests of youth. During Eid, there were mass arrests of hundreds of young people. There's a very negative feeling in the camps now. And it's entirely understandable that people want to raise their voices. It's good that it's peaceful. But the Bangladesh policies are really very counterproductive, especially if we consider the future of the Rohingya themselves. The future depends on the children, and the children do not have access to education. There are only a few kindergarten-style centers, but they do not offer a full curriculum, and there is absolutely nothing for the older children.
Well, this is really we're out of time. I'm sorry to interrupt, Jan. We're out of time, but thank you very much for the work you do and throw the spotlight, and we'll pray that the world turns their mind and helps them. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Canadian Muslim News. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe. God bless.